I am your host, Nicole Will, and we're so happy you're here as we navigate the world with your aging loved one. We are here to come alongside older adults, family members, and the senior living community as we explore the world of aging and elder care with helpful resources, informative interviews, and approachable conversation. We get to do this together, so join us on our journey, and this is the Will Gather podcast. One thing is for sure. No one plans on being a dementia caregiver when they grow up. These were the words spoken by my guest today. Kitty Norton is a filmmaker and a director. Wine, Women, and Dementia is her first feature film. The documentary film Wine, Women, and Dementia reveals the profound burden that family caregivers endure as they care for their loved ones with dementia. This includes the isolation, financial strain, and physical and emotional exhaustion affecting both the caregiver and their care recipient. Kitty Norton, a former family caregiver to her mom, decided to embark on a cross-country RV journey to visit 5 other caregivers who she had formed a close bond with through their shared experiences. Despite having only interacted online, their in-person meeting allowed them to share deeply personal and humorous stories about their lives as caregivers. Through their stories, the documentary Wine, Women, and Dementia provides a raw and honest portrayal of the realities of caring for someone with dementia, including both of the challenges and moments of beauty. Ultimately, the film celebrates the themes of perseverance, devotion, and the importance of finding joy amidst the difficult journey of caring for a loved one with dementia. Kitty and I talk about her inspiration behind the film, what motivated her to create a space for caregivers to feel acknowledged, how we come together in our common experiences and emotions as caregivers, how storytelling helps caregivers feel connected to each other and build that sense of community. We talk about the challenges and barriers that caregivers can face when they seek support, how caregivers can be encouraged to live out loud and share their stories and experiences with others, and how it benefits our caregiver community. We look at how the film industry can better represent the experiences of caregivers and all of the details about filming, what it was like meeting everybody for the first time, where did the journey take them. This interview and this film is a true representation of what an estimated 16 million unpaid dementia family caregivers go through. And as Kitty says, it is a road trip connecting the disconnected, because until there's a cure, there's community. Here is my interview with Kitty Norton. Kitty, the day is here. We finally get to visit. I've been looking forward to this. Thank you.
Me too. Thank you for asking me.
Yes. Well, I had the honor to meet you at the Care Colloquium and have a sneak peek at the screening of your documentary, Wine, Women, and Dementia. Oh my gosh, so much to talk about. So I cannot wait to hear more of the backstory, your mission behind what you are up to. You've had quite the road to get there. Tell us more about that.
Well, my mom was diagnosed with dementia in 2010, and my dad was going to take care of her until the day she died. But unfortunately, my father died first, rather quickly, from pancreatic cancer. And that was in 2016. I had moved down to LA to start a second career as an assistant editor for, I was working on some NBC shows. My last job that I got was on This Is Us as an assistant editor for its first season. Dad got sick that summer and died, and I never got to work on the show. It was clear to my sister and I that my mom could not live on her own. So my boyfriend and I moved back home, and we moved in with Mom, and my sister, who lives on the Oregon coast, she and I split up the days, and we took care of Mom until she died in March of 2021.
What a time. And you probably had no idea that your life's path would prepare you for what you're doing now, right? I mean, all of it to come together.
Yeah, it was kind of funny. There were times when I would compare running a dementia household to like doing events because I used to work in nonprofit theater before I changed careers. And a lot of it was a lot like working on a show in post production or working on events. Like you have all these people you need to organize, you have all these things you need to do. You have to be really, on top of your little details game. And it was exhausting.
Mm-hmm. Oh,
And
yes.
at the end of it, you don't get this nice, beautiful show in the can or this great event that everybody congratulates you on. What you get is your dementia person finally goes on to their next adventure, and that's not quite the same.
No, it's not. It's not. I love how you focus on the life and not the death. And that was when you were sharing your stories through your blog. And I want you to talk more about that because it really was a way to connect with other caregivers and share all that happens when we care for others, mostly with dementia and focusing on the life. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it was 2 years into our adventure, I needed something creative. And so I started writing a blog about it, and I loved it because I would make up all the images. Because on my sister's days, I could disappear downstairs into my computer and create something. And I knew I wasn't a dementia expert. I knew I didn't want to give out like all the statistics on dementia and, what the latest research is. I just wanted to talk about what it's like. Yeah. And I was disappointed in all of the media I saw that just really focuses on the tragedy and the devastation. And yes, those things are there, but there's a whole bunch of us dementia households also pulling life out of this situation because we have to. Our dementia person needs it. We need it. I couldn't spend a decade crying over mom's diagnosis. This is a long disease, So we had to learn how to put ourselves into it, and our sense of humor was a big thing in our family. What do you do when suddenly your person is just positing poop nuggets all over the house? Like,
Yeah.
of course, the first month you're just furious about it, and then you kind of wear yourself out with anger, and you're like, all right, I need to think of this differently. we need a new perspective on this. So we would call it our dirty little Easter egg hunt, and that allowed us to at least infuse some humor into something that's really frustrating. The second time that day you're down on the carpet digging out bits of poop. But we needed that, and mom needed that, and she needed her sense of humor still with her, and it was fun to help her have that. And it's not, we didn't succeed every day, but it's certainly, once we made that change, it certainly made a difference in our journey. And when I started writing about that, I found a lot of people were connecting to it all over the world, and they were saying, yes, this is kind of how I feel too. Like I can't be sad all the time. And, we did this, and my husband just went outside in his underwear, and, we called it the underwear parade and got him back in, but it took a while, and the neighbors were asking questions, and, just a sense of fun, which is a weird way to say it, but
I know. And I love that you call it the adventure. It's how we look at our circumstances when we don't have that control that can start to reshape our perspective on it. So in adventure, it's like, okay, we can add humor in here and we can overcome with a little bit of lightness in those like really, really hard moments. And I think you doing that gives then other people permission to know that they can as well.
I hope so. I hadn't ever thought about it like that, so I really like the way you put it. But yeah, that's kind of what we had to do, and I think other people are already inclined to go that way. But caregivers are so isolated. They're like, "Oh, is this disrespectful? Am I doing this right? Would everybody just be, does everybody look at me like I'm a freak and I'm not doing right by my person?" It's like you got to get through dementia however you get through dementia.
Yeah, you do. There is it needs to be this judgment-free zone that you do what you need to do. 100%.
If you want to
Yeah.
spend the whole decade crying, go for it. You know, but if you're kind of tired and dehydrated, let's try something different.
Yeah, let's shift that. You talk about when you decided to choose differently. Did something prompt you to do that? Was there like a moment, or was it just you just decided it's time?
No, I don't think it was a specific moment. In fact, I think it happened before we even took over. Because my father, God love him, for the longest time, just thought mom was drunk. After we got the diagnosis, he spent 2 years, literally, at one point he said to me, I don't think she has dementia, I think she's just drunk. And it's like, Dad, you know, and I think maybe his denial prompted me to move in that direction, because it's like, that's not doing him any good. It wasn't doing mom any good. And it made it harder on both of them. And I think that maybe subconsciously just made me think, this is going to be a long time in this little mindset. Mm-hmm. Do I want to sit here, or do I want to do something a little different for myself?
How did you decide I'm going to make a film and I'm going to tell the stories? Like, where do we go from I'm writing a blog and I'm taking care of my mom to now I have this big undertaking with an RV, mind you, and traveling the country?
Part of the answer to that, Nicole, is I got no brains. I just none.
You know, sometimes it's like our what we don't know is okay. Sometimes we just got to go for it.
I'm like, what? I made little videos of mom while she was alive, and I worked in post-production. Sure, I can make a feature documentary.
Yes, you can.
What
Yes.
an idiot. After mom died, I had a real sense of needing freedom. And I still live in mom's house. So I was surrounded by so much of her and dad. I wasn't ready to deal with it. I was happy for her. You know, I was just elated that she had moved on, but I also just wanted out. And I couldn't do it permanently yet. And I had made, through the blog, I made so many friends all over the planet, but 5 of them had become very important to me. We all shared a similar sense of humor. When things were really bad for me, I would reach out to 1 or 2 of them, always get support. Sometimes when things were really bad for them, I mean, we traded emails. Some people I Zoomed with. They had just become really good friends. And I knew I wanted to go meet them.
Yeah.
And I thought, screw it. I'm just going to drive around the country. That's freedom, you know, and just go meet these people. And then I thought about it, and I thought, I want to help the caregivers who are coming up. And I thought, can I afford to do this? And mom and dad had left my sister and I a little bit of money, and I thought, that's what I'm going to use my inheritance for. I'm going to make a film. So I hired the skeleton crew, including one being my boyfriend, who I didn't pay at all.
So good. We all have those people, right? We're like, come on.
I gave him a title. And I bought a beat up old RV, and I plastered mom's face all over it, and my friend did a logo for me, and I thought, this is it. We're gonna do this. We're gonna see if I come home with anything worth making a movie out of. And we did. This is how I'm trying to make it better for those coming up. And I know so many of us who go through this experience, not just dementia family caregiving, but family caregiving, period, we don't get out of it because we see the need and we just want to help the next bunch of people. And that's what I'm trying to do, and what everybody who participated is trying to do. And it was so much fun meeting these people.
I wish I could have been right there with just watching it. So I had the honor of watching the film, and I instantly felt, I don't know, it was like a connection to you and then the people that you had met along the way. And there's laughter. I cried. I loved the realness of it. The transparency of those emotions that we feel, but no one really has the courage to say. And it is so interesting to hear from different perspectives, right? From like all over the country. And everyone that you met and that shared their story, it's exactly the mission that you hope that happens, where other caregivers can see parts of themselves in that and feel encouraged. And I know your mission is to really help caregivers see themselves as valued and celebrated, and their stories are heard, and that you can share them, and that the greater culture here can hear them as well and be impacted by that.
That's exactly. You are so good at making me concise and clarifying what I'm trying to say.
Well, thank you for producing work for me to do that.
We need to hang
We're
out
a really
more
good
often.
team. We do. We're a really good team.
See, Nicole, you just interpret what I just tried to say there in a much better way. Yeah, the first person that we did was Allison Schreier up in Seattle, and I was terrified. I was like, is this just the dumbest idea ever? But you open a bottle of wine with a caregiver and sit down and just talk caregiver smack, and oh my God, we laughed, we cried, we had so much fun. And when I got back and looked at the footage, I'm like, this is it. This is exactly what I want family caregivers to see all over the world, and what I want audiences to see all over the world, what I want them to understand about the dementia journey. So, I knew cool. I had not screwed up. Whether the rest of the world feels like it's worth watching, I knew I made something that I wanted to see in 2016.
Yes, and that's what matters. That's what matters. I say that about the podcast. It's like I re-listen to my podcasts all the time with my guests, and I'm like, you know what? If I created something that I know that I feel proud of and that I enjoy, just like how you witnessed your filming and you're like, this is it. I feel good about this, and I think we have that knowing and understanding that it's going to resonate, and obviously there's how many people in the world, so not everything touches everyone, but if we don't do anything, then it's not going to reach anybody. So we've just got to make some action. It was really, really fun for me to see Allison as someone that you have spent time with and know, because Allison is my guest tomorrow. And Allison, yes. And Allison and I have been in touch for quite a while. And so not only had I known her on a personal level, but it was so powerful for me to see her then share her story with you in that way. So I love that you guys know each other. I was like, oh, this is awesome.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. And the other thing, I had all these doubts. Like I said, I was too ignorant to know I couldn't do it, but I also had all these self-doubts. And I thought, well, we've all enjoyed each other in different capacities, but we've never met. What if we meet and they don't like me?
Oh, they do.
And that was when I got over that hump with Allison. It came up every single time, but much less. And once Allison and I met, it was just like girlfriends. It was like sitting down and chatting with a girlfriend. And, the film crew kept telling me, well, we need to get all this B-roll and all this stuff. And I'm like, no, it's the caregiver stories that I want. Because initially I thought this would just be caregiver stories. I wouldn't be in it. The trip wouldn't be in it. And they were like, that's really boring. And I, of course, didn't believe them. But I did eventually have to compromise, because when I finally got to the post-production, and the editor, who just was so amazing, he was like, all right, well, we do need a little bit of your story in here. We do need the trip in here. We do need to break it up.
I think it made it so much more enjoyable to watch your story woven within it. I think that's what is heartfelt. And you do provide this really fun, comic relief in a way of just overcoming challenges with the RV, or sharing your story with your mom. And it's all that real life stuff that we're like, oh yeah, we are in it.
One of my favorite lines in the film comes from my travel partner, Beth, when we're trying to get shit set up at an RV camp, and she's like, yeah, we're like our own water and power company, and we suck at it.
I loved that. Yes, you're trying to, logistics of all of that. I know I would probably not thrive in that environment, so I could just, relate to
Well, and that's
overcoming
like
all of
being
the
a family
challenges.
caregiver too. It's like, yeah, we're like our own doctor, surgeon, and medical team, and we
Oh,
suck at it.
yeah,
Just trying to
yeah,
figure stuff
exactly.
out.
Chef, cleaner, yeah, all
Financial planner. We're bad
financial,
at all of
right?
it.
Yes. Yeah, financial planning is not in my future. I do know that.
Oh
I do
boy.
know that. Oh man. There's this sentence you say too that you're like, one thing is for sure, no one plans on being a dementia caregiver when they grow up. Like none of us think when we're younger and when we're going to do all these things, we don't plan for that. So there's an element too of grief that this has disrupted our lives, and not only for ourselves, but for the person that we love, because they didn't plan for that either.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
very true.
And you honor your mom in ways because you named the RV after her, correct? Yes,
Dude,
Gloria. I love naming a car. I had a car that was like this little red car, and it was so small, and it was only a two-door, and you'd always get like trapped inside. And I named my car Charlotte because the license plate the license plate was EBW, and it made me think of E.B. White from Charlotte's Web. So I was like, you get stuck when you go in it. Anyways, that's a tangent, but I love naming a car an RV. You also brought your mom's green jacket with you on that journey, and your dad's, was it dad's hat?
It was my dad's cowboy hat. Yeah.
Cowboy hat.
Yeah, I just wanted to have a piece of them with us on the road. After I initially took over, trying to figure out money, we actually sold mom and dad's RV because they were big outdoors people. So, it just felt like I was kind of following in their footsteps in a way.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it was really cool.
So you first stopped to see Allison, and then how many people and how many states did you visit along the way?
I think it was 27. I counted it up, and I think the intro in the film actually says it, but I think we did 27 states, a little over 7,500 miles, Seattle, then we went to Chicago, then we went to Amherst, New Hampshire, Pennsylvania, Trapp, PA, Atlanta, Georgia, which was a little stop for my friend Nicolette, who also had both her mom and her grandma with Alzheimer's. And then my final friend meeting in person was Veronica in Dallas. Dropped Bethy off in LA, and I came back up to Portland, Oregon.
That's like a big loop.
I know.
How long did that take you to do all that?
I think I was on the road for 27 days. So I think it took me 4 days just coming back from LA by myself. So everybody else had a much shorter ride. The crew was done after Dallas. All the footage after that is just done on our phones. Yeah. It was, for a girl who wanted freedom, it was phenomenal.
That,
so many places I had never been to. And while it's tough because when you're in an RV, you're just driving all the time, and they're stressful and big. But it was wonderful. It was flipping wonderful. We almost took off the top of the RV in a couple of states, one being Pennsylvania, the other one being Atlanta. And people we'd start to go under this overpass, and I'd realize that we were too big.
Yeah, clearance.
And then people wouldn't back up behind us. It's like, I don't know what you want us to do, but we're not going this way.
We're not going forward, so...
Y'all better figure it out back there. Instead of honking and screaming, why don't you just figure out what you're going to do?
Exactly. Oh my goodness.
we
Those are the
mayhem.
things that make all of it so memorable.
Yeah,
so memorable.
It was amazing.
When you were able to visit with everyone, so you got to meet these dear people that you've connected with before, was everyone open to sharing their story? What was it like meeting everyone for the first time? I know you kind of talked about it a little bit with Allison, but what were their thoughts on all of it?
Nobody was shy. Like, we were all just ready. And maybe they felt the same way. They were like, what if she doesn't like me? Or what if I don't like her or something, But so I think we were all just ready to really enjoy each other's company. And since we had all kind of met because we shared the same kind of perspective getting through dementia, there wasn't a story anybody told that we were like, ooh, that's terrible. Why did you do that? There were some terrible stories, but we're all like, I get it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Totally get it. You know? And then you'd have your terrible story to tell. Like, okay, so here's when I was, the world's worst caregiver. It was just fun. Like Grace, who I met in Chicago, she and I initially met on an online support group trial. And we had just kept meeting. Once the trial was over, it was a 6-week thing. So we knew each other fairly well. And we had been meeting on Zoom for 2 years. Roseanne and I had been a guest on her podcast. Matt, I knew much better than Lindsay and Amherst. That was the husband and wife team. So Lindsay was a first-time meeting. Veronica and I just had the best time. We just... And every single time we would stay up later than after the crew had wrapped, and we'd just keep talking because we just had so much more to say,
Yeah.
So
I
think they enjoyed themselves. Mm-hmm. I brought wine.
They sure looked like they did. Did you find that there were commonalities and emotions that kind of wove itself through each of their stories that you related to?
Yes. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And I think that's one thing, I wrote about this too when I was writing the blog. I think that's one thing that they don't tell you as a caregiver. So often it's, well, every dementia person is different when you're talking to professionals, and it's like, no, there are commonalities here. There are commonalities in behaviors. There are commonalities in emotions and feelings, both for you and your dementia person, on all fronts. So let's acknowledge and give some people some heads up on, hey, you may go through the rage stage. It's not guaranteed, but when you do, it's going to surprise you. So here's a little info on it. Your person may just be batshit crazy one day for no reason. It may be a UTI. Who knew UTIs were such an issue when you're a younger person?
Oh my gosh. It's like the first thing I think of. I'm like, what? Is this it? Yeah.
And we're all shocked by it the first time. A UTI, why would that but it does. And feelings, like you're going to feel isolated. You're going to feel guilty. You're going to burn out. There's a million articles on how not to have caregiver burnout. And that's fantastic. But none of them acknowledge that you can lessen burnout, but you're not going to get through this journey without having some period of it. And don't be guilty. Don't feel terrible about it. It's going to happen. It's going to make you slow down. It's going to make you take stock. And when it happens, it's going to be kind of a good thing because it's going to force you to change something and go forward and be a little bit better.
Yeah. There's that whole transparency too with our reaction. And you had talked about like some of your reactions that you weren't super proud of, and also giving people permission that like we're not going to get this perfect all the time every day in our caregiving. We can talk about all these ways of how we communicate and show compassion, and that's wonderful, and we need those tools. But the reality is that life also just steps in, and we are human, and we react and we do things in our burnout that we might not be super proud of, but we do, and that's okay, because then we make a different decision the next day.
I see a lot of that affirmation more on social media and forums than I do in any kind of books or films or television programs, articles. Yeah. I don't see people talking about that a lot. It's like, sometimes you're going to screw up big, and it's just going to happen, and you're going to feel terrible. I know. I've been there. Mm-hmm. I know where you're at. Mm-hmm. Sit there for however long you need to, and then get back on the horse. And don't worry about it. Don't kill yourself over it. Or kill yourself for a little bit.
Yeah.
And then let go.
The next time, yeah. Right. Feel that sting a little, and okay. Do you find that caregivers are shying away from really sharing their personal experiences? Or is there now more of this medium with having you share your story, or like you said, on social media, where we can feel connected to others as we kind of build that resilience in our journey?
Yes. I think I think all of us start this journey thinking that we can do this for our loved one. You know, husbands and wives say, till death do us part. Children say, hey, they did it for me. You know, I can do this for them. And for some reason, we have this hero mentality that we can do it all by ourselves. And I think this goes for all terminal diseases. The reality is you can't. What you're going to end up doing is putting this person somewhere where you can no longer deal with it because you burnt yourself out that bad. And having the community, finding your community is so important. You know, if forums don't work for you, fine, go to TikTok. Man, I cannot believe what people on TikTok are doing right now. And that's something I wish was around in 2016. This level of how they're sharing their stories with their dementia person, or the dementia person themselves are sharing their stories. I had some dementia people that I follow on Twitter that were extremely helpful, but I didn't see a whole lot on Instagram. I wasn't on TikTok early on. So, you know, it's just, you have no idea what you're getting into, even if you think you have an idea of what you're getting into. So seeing other people's journeys helps so much to kind of prepare you. And the other thing that I actually didn't understand this until the Care Colloquium is how many family caregivers there are out there that don't identify as a family caregiver. And that is an issue so many other professionals are working on. I can't even begin to touch. But I think that's really important too, to understand, you know, if you're caring for your kids and your parent and you're a family caregiver and you're holding down a job and you're, you know, keeping the yard up. And I mean, that's a lot. Yeah. Identify as a family caregiver and start to find that community that can help you get some new tricks and tips and strategies, you know?
Yeah. Those are really good places to go for that support. And I love that you brought up TikTok. You're going to have to like offline teach me some. And I'm like still trying to figure it out, but I know it's so valuable. I've interacted with a few people and I'm like, I love the sharing and I love seeing and witnessing it in real time.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. There's robot_Charlie is Carlos Olivas, and he's sharing his journey with his dad. Jacqueline Revere shared her journey with her mom and is still, now she's in kind of caregiver aftermath and is still sharing. Jessica Guthrie, Career Caregiver Collide. It's amazing. It's like, I remember reading the 36-Hour Caregiver, which is a really dry book. Lots of information, but not a single banana joke.
Right. So you're like, okay, I got the data, but I need the
and to
personal,
see these people just put it out there, it's amazing. I've written 3 different blogs and mentioned, you know, for new caregivers, go, because that's what I wanted in 2016. That's what I wanted to see. And instead I was reading a book that was like, I don't know if I can get through this.
Oh, wait, no. We've come,
are there pictures?
We really have.
Help.
Is there like a soundtrack?
I know, this is on tape. Even that I might fall asleep during.
Oh, we've come
but
so
still
far.
Very valuable. I don't want to diss that book. Very valuable.
It is. Yeah. And I always say, like, we all have our own style of what we resonate to and different people and voices. And so finding what works for us to connect and learn. And I think that's really important too. Like, we have choice in that. You know, there's enough people that are putting out some really great information that we can pull from.
That's a really good point.
Yeah.
And I think, thank God, you know, as that being kind of my first introduction, I didn't give up.
Exactly. Oh my gosh.
When you're so bewildered and you're so overwhelmed and you're exhausted already, you're like, oh, this one thing that just made me sadder, so I'm not going to look at anything else. Yeah, that's a really good point.
I'm glad you said that, because that could encourage someone that might feel like that right now to actually keep going.
Yeah.
Find your people.
Find your people.
Find your people. Get a glass of wine. Watch the documentary. Oh. Oh, you're talking about this whole idea of like living out loud and caregivers feeling like they can take their stories and share with others. How do we bring this into communities and into the greater conversation? And what's your vision for that? I'm excited about that.
Yeah, we're still kind of working it out, but this is what I really, in our impact campaign, we're focusing on two things: celebrate caregivers and caregivers live out loud. And I want people to be able to kind of piggyback. Like they see the film, they really resonate with there's one story that stands out particularly to them. So they make an Instagram or they make a reel or they do something that says, hey, when Roseanne changed her shirt and her mom was so happy to see her, that reminds me of the story when my husband was so angry and I went and put on a different hat and came in the house and he's like, oh, that person's been driving me crazy. And then, send it on to the next person and just share your stories. And I'm not quite sure how to get it started without having the film completely out there yet, but I want people to feel like, oh, that story reminds me of my story, and now I want to share my story and see who responds to that story.
Yeah,
and
just the ripple.
Yeah, just piggyback it. And
yeah.
Because that's one thing we've noticed when we have screened the film is we have a Q&A afterwards, but we don't actually get a lot of questions. What it is people, they have a story to tell. They're like, oh, when she said that in the film, that was when I was like, blah, blah, blah. And everybody's got their story. Everybody's ready to talk.
Yes, they just don't,
They don't feel like they have permission, I guess, or they don't see other people doing it.
Right, or the place to do it and have people listen, I think. Where is that forum? But, and connecting right in those groups or different things like that, but giving people a place to go, actually.
Well, and I think there's this perception, too, and maybe it's true. I didn't really access caregiver support groups, but I think there's this perception about them that all you do is talk about the problems. And, there's younger millennial caregivers and younger that are making very different choices about their support groups. Like Veronica Shanklin in the movie, she has I Am a Care Warrior, her Care Warriors Foundation. She starts a nonprofit in the middle of taking care of 2 dementia people. She's such an overachiever. But they started doing support groups at like Mexican restaurants where they'd have a margarita, talk about their month, but it's in a much more sharing kind of like community setting as opposed to let's all sit down and what was your biggest challenge this month and how do you get through that, and so they're just thinking differently and they're making it fit their lifestyle and their needs, and I think that's really cool.
It's reimagining that. And in a similar way, same with your film, it was, let's do what's your favorite thing to do, right? Have wine with your sister, rehash the day, unwind. And that's what I love to do with my girlfriends, right? You get in the kitchen, you open a bottle of wine, you talk and you share. Why can't we continue to do those things that bring us joy in different ways with people when we're actually working through some of the same life stuff? To have the forum to do that it doesn't have to be that typical way of maybe how we were in support groups or shared previously. It's like, oh no, we can make this however we want.
Yeah,
Let's
I think
do
so
that.
too. And like during the pandemic, we couldn't get together, especially in those early days when we just didn't really understand it. So we would Zoom. We would still have our girlfriend nights, but we'd do it on Zoom. And, if I've sent you a bottle of wine and you're drinking it, then you have to listen to my dementia story.
Right. Yeah. Here is the token. Yeah.
I dropped it off on your porch. That means I get a full half hour to talk about dementia, and you're just going to have to listen.
You enjoy that bottle, and I will do the talking. Yeah. Oh, man. Gosh. There's something about when we have the space to just be ourselves, and that means fully, right? Like laugh, share the story, cry, have someone listen. I think a lot of times, like when I'm sharing the hard stuff, I don't need someone to like tell me what to do. I just want you to hear me talk. And say, yes, okay, I'm in this with you. That's part of it.
I agree. And so much of it with community is sometimes people, they're not giving you something to try or something to do or a new strategy. They're just kind of listening to your story and then going, wow, she threw that how hard? You know? that dish went how far across the living room? Well, at least she's got a really good throwing arm, you know, and it just gives you, like, just tweaks your perspective a little, and you can be like, oh yeah, that actually is kind of funny, even though that was my favorite dish from Tiffany's.
Yeah, find the humor. You even say that. You're like, I forget it was like hilarity that comes when you're forced to accept the unacceptable. Like, you're just like, okay.
All right, yep.
All right, I don't have any other options. So, yeah. How are you seeing that, in terms of like the film world, which you're in, are you finding that in that industry, we don't really see representation or experiences of caregivers? And so how are you hopeful that this will start to create some of that like conversation and in that inclusive storytelling? Because when we look at the numbers, right? Okay, 53 million family caregivers, 16 million dementia family caregivers. There are so many of us, and it's not widely shared.
I found it really odd that all the films, whether they're educational or narrative, documentaries, they don't focus very often on the caregivers. We're just kind of a side note for most of them. And I don't understand how you understand the full picture of dementia without the other half of the equation, which is the family caregiver, So what I'm hoping that this film shows is that you can't really have a grasp of what this life is like for these households unless you get it from the caregivers. Because your dementia person often can't tell you anymore. Sometimes they'll tell you quite a bit of things, but a lot of them are not necessarily true. I was in the circus. Like, no, you weren't, Dad. I was a trapeze artist. No, you didn't do that either. So I really want the world that's interested in this subject to see what it's really like, to see that the caregivers are really, they have a lot to offer in the understanding. They don't have the science. They aren't experts on dementia. I'm not an expert on dementia. What I am is an expert on my mom, getting my mom through dementia. And that's what all of these people are doing. They become very much an expert on their own person. And I want them to see themselves. I want them to see the terror and the tragedy and the laughter and the screw-ups and the epic fails and the successes. And I want them to feel like theirs are just as equally important to be put on a screen and to be put out there. I didn't make a perfect film, but I made one of the first films that really focuses on caregivers. And I hope the person who makes the next film that focuses on family caregivers does an even better job than I did. My listeners can't see me. I'm like nodding and nodding and nodding. Yes, I couldn't have said it better. And I will do everything in my power to help share your message and your film and your story. I had told you this a while ago, having been raised in a family that values film so much. Yeah,
and my
dad's a filmmaker.
My dad's a filmmaker. And so I know firsthand, I've witnessed, I know how much goes into creating something like that, and then to see it come to life. And so know that it is valued and appreciated, and the families that have walked through that perseverance and all of it. So I just thank you. Thank you for putting your heart out there and your work and doing it in a way that is bringing us along with the humor. I can't wait for people to see it. And you've got really fun things coming, festival. And where can we learn more? When does the film come out fully for us all to experience and witness? I want all the details.
Yeah, and just a side note, Nicole's dad is a professional filmmaker, whereas I'm an amateur who knew how to hire professionals to help her make a good film.
Oh my gosh. This is, okay, we're going to practice this. You are going to say, I am a filmmaker. I am a professional filmmaker. I'm a woman that had a vision, that saw it come to life, and you give yourself that credit.
Okay, ditto what she said.
Yeah. Yes. Yes, you just call me and I'll be like, here you go.
I know. I need you with me to interpret. What are you doing? Are you coming to Iowa in the April?
Well, I am in Minnesota, so. Oh, so fun.
Yeah, so we're gonna spend the majority of this year going the festival route and working on our impact campaign. So we're able to do community screenings, private screenings, invite-only screenings, so that doesn't jeopardize our festival submissions. I believe, and again, I'm learning as I go, I believe that we're probably going to release the film for pre-sales in mid-November and for sale in December. Okay. I'm still trying to figure out a lot of distribution, and I've done a lot of great research, again, finding communities about independent film distribution and finding people that really spoke to me in the podcast. I'm like, okay, now I get what she's saying. I'm not finding that traditional distribution is very advantageous for small-time filmmakers. If you're a big person and you make a documentary and Netflix comes along, you're great. You're set. They're going to pay you a lot of money and you're going to be able to make your next project. Mm-hmm. If you're a little indie film, you're probably never going to see a dime. And some indie films end up owing other distributors money for all the fees that they charge. So I think we're going to self-distribute. But in the meantime, we're posting all festivals that we get on winewomenanddementia.com. We just did a redo of the website. It looks great. We're going to have resources on there. Yeah, so that's the place to get the most up-to-date information, because as soon as I get something, I send it right out to that subscriber list. And we have our world premiere at Julian Dubuque International Film Festival, April 26th through the 30th. So we're incredibly excited.
It's coming up.
I know.
I might have to make a road trip. I'll have to see
what I'm doing at that time. They screen each film twice, so there'll be 2 options to catch it, and we're just starting on kind of our PR for that to make sure that the theaters are filled and people are excited, and it's just, I can't wait.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, just to see all of that come to life and witness everyone watching it. It's going to be so exciting. So exciting. Well, thank you. I know I'm looking at the time, but I'm sure we could have lots of fun conversation.
I'll just keep talking.
I know. Let's keep going. This has been so great. Thank you, Kitty, so much. And we'll include all of that information in the show notes so that people can go and click and find it. So thank you.
I got a caregiver movie coming for you, everybody.
Yes. Let's do it.
Let's
go. Share it. Support
it.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you.
And if you would like to see the film live, visit winewomenanddementia.com. It is also premiering at the Julian Dubuque International Film Festival, Wednesday, April 26th through Sunday, April 30th of 2023. Go visit the Wine Women and Dementia website for tickets. It is worth every moment of your time and of your energy to get there. Thank you for listening today. If you enjoyed our episode, please subscribe and give us 5 stars. In all honesty, we'd love to hear from you. Thank you so much for listening to our episode.